for accelerated socio-economic development in the fight against sanctions is an indication that to reach its goal for the youth development, the government of the Republic of Zimbabwe cannot do so under unilateral cohesive measures. So, differently, it is as though the youth development that the future of our region with innovative stamina, and they have no access to certain means of production, therefore their energy goes wasted. Therefore, Namibia reiterates her call on the international community to unconditionally remove these sanctions in order to pave the way for much needed sustainable development in Zimbabwe. Because these sanctions are also hampering the sustainable development goal. How can we reach the sustainable development goal when you are sanctioned? It's like a person who is tied with his hand behind the back. How do you expect such a person to swim? In the same vein, call on the international community to instead resort to in a constructive approach that are complementary to the efforts that are put in place by the government of Zimbabwe. The government of the Republic of Namibia joins the government, the people of Zimbabwe, as well as the region of SADC as the host various activities in the country for the SADC Anti-sanction Day, and we assure them of unwavering support and solidarity. Mahatma Gandhi once said, "The truth never damages a cause that is just." And I believe people of Zimbabwe are just, they are sovereign, and they have the right to self-determination to determine the path which they want to choose. There is nobody from Europe, from America, that will give them, or they will give them self-determination as a gift to the planet. So we say, may God bless the people of Zimbabwe. May the rain of prosperity wet your field land, and the morning dew wet your grass field, so that you might be able to produce for today and live for the succeeding generation. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. Another round of applause. Thank you. I don't want to water down the speech, but I want to say I got these words. These are English words as far as these sanctions are concerned. Unjust sanctions. Unilateral sanctions. Coercive measures. There is a paradox. The United Nations is saying, let us improve the quality of life for people. Let us, people must enjoy their human rights. And the sanctions are bringing the negatives. That is the paradox I'm talking about. He mentioned that. And that Namibia calls for the unconditional removal of sanctions. and that Zimbabwe has the right for self-determination. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Another round of applause. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Our program is moving. We are now going to listen to a lady from Zimbabwe, a lady who is representing the Zimbabwean community, and this lady is a businesswoman, and her name is Miss Juliet Madamonde. Juliet. Yeah, we are balancing this, the acts, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. Come, come.
Okay, thank you, Director of Proceedings. Honorable Ambassador Jerobiam Shanika, representatives from the Government of the Republic of Namibia, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished guests, fellow citizens, ladies and gentlemen. Today I stand before you as a proud Zimbabwean citizen, deeply concerned about the devastating impact of unilateral sanctions imposed on our beloved nation more than 2 decades ago. The sentiments that I'm going to share with you today represents the collective voice of millions of Zimbabweans who have been profoundly affected by the far-reaching consequences of these sanctions. As I address you this evening, it is crucial that we acknowledge the gravity of the matter we are gathered for this evening and the ingrained repercussions it exerts on our communities. Unilateral sanctions have undeniably played a significant role in contributing to irregular movements of people. It is disheartening to acknowledge that the countries imposing these sanctions have, by and large, failed to protect irregular migrants and refugees fleeing from the miseries and lack of opportunities in Zimbabwe. Our fellow compatriots, out of sheer desperation, often embark on covert and perilous journeys to Western and neighboring countries where they are forced to live in substandard conditions, subjected to forced labor, servitude, forced prostitution, and human trafficking. This grim reality is a stark reminder that the impact of these sanctions transcends mere economic statistics. The weight of these sanctions extends beyond political borders, with profound implications on the lives and dignity of ordinary citizens, with women and girls amongst the most vulnerable. The consequences of these sanctions are intricate and far-reaching, making it challenging to pinpoint their precise impact on our nation's predicament. Unilateral sanctions, coupled with secondary sanctions, de-risking policies, and over-compliance, have exacerbated our pre-existing economic and humanitarian crisis. These sanctions have stifled progress towards our sustainable development goals and eroded various fundamental human rights. One of the most severe outcomes of these sanctions is the reluctance of foreign companies and banks to engage in business with Zimbabwe's public sector. This reluctance not only impedes the government's ability to generate revenue for essential services, but also results in the violation of labor and social rights for public sector employees who receive significantly lower salaries compared to their counterparts in the private sector. Consequently, unemployment rates have soared, particularly among highly qualified professionals such as engineers, doctors, teachers, university professors, and judges. Low salaries unemployment and the expansion of the informal economy have increased poverty, criminal activities, corruption, sexual exploitation, and drug abuse, especially among the most vulnerable in our society. The readiness to impose secondary sanctions, coupled with criminal and civil penalties, along with the imposition of high fines on Zimbabwe banks, has labeled Zimbabwe a high-risk country. De-risking policies and the exodus of correspondent banks have compounded issues related to money transfers, including the freezing of Zimbabweans' bank accounts, the closure of long-standing bank accounts, and the escalation of costs and delays in bank transfers. Regrettably, the government, banks, public institutions, private companies, and individuals have been compelled to seek alternative means to participate in international trade, which has in turn fostered crime and corruption. This in turn undermines the institutions and the values of democracy, ethical principles, and justice, jeopardizing sustainable development and the rule of law. Various forms of de-risking policies of banks, donors, and trade partners leading to over-compliance have affected all education levels, primary, secondary, and tertiary. This includes impediments for staff, professors, and researchers in seeking grants or paying members for professional associations. Low salaries and limited internet access have led to the inability to pay tuition fees and a surge in school and university dropout rates. The emigration of teachers and university professors in conjunction with a reduction in schooling hours poses a severe threat to the right to education. The reluctance of foreign partners to cooperate with Zimbabwean educational institutions, sports societies, and private companies, combined with the impediments to money transfers, has affected academic freedoms, cultural rights, and the right to education. Such isolation from the international cooperation also hampers the participation of Zimbabwean sportspersons and artists in international competitions. In addition, the voting rights of Zimbabwe in different multilateral environmental agencies have been affected due to the inability to pay membership fees. This further isolates our nation from international cooperation and obstructs us from realizing our rights to education, professional growth, and development. Extraterritorial secondary sanctions and reported threats to and penalties imposed on various institutions in third countries for breach of sanction regimes have prevented the government, public sector, and private companies from acquiring necessary equipment, machinery, and spare parts crucial in key sectors of the economy. This, coupled with emigration of competent staff, makes it hard and expensive to supply necessary equipment and parts for the repair and maintenance of water, public transport, telephone, and communication systems, as well as schools, hospitals, public housing, and other public services, and to implement development projects. The lack of investment has had a devastating impact on Zimbabwe's population, particularly those living in extreme poverty conditions, women and young people, children, medical workers, and individuals with disability, or those affected by life-threatening and chronic diseases, particularly in the rural areas. In conclusion, these unilateral sanctions have had profound and devastating consequences for our nation, affecting every facet of our society, from the economy to humanitarian considerations. The impact is not limited to government officials or institutions. It is acutely felt by ordinary Zimbabwean citizens who have been forced to bear the brunt of these measures. As a nation, we appeal to the international community to reconsider the impacts of these sanctions on our people, our rights, and our ability to forge a better future. It is our hope that through dialogue, cooperation, and a genuine understanding of our situation, we can chart a path forward that benefits not only Zimbabwe, but also the broader global community. Together, we can work towards a brighter and more prosperous future for our nation and its people. I thank you.
Thank you, Juliet. Another round of applause. She poured out her heart like a responsible mother. One thing which she talked about, which I wanted to talk about at the beginning, but I said, let me wait, is that today we are looking at the gravity of the matter, and the matter is sanctions. When we met on the 17th of May, some of the members of the diplomatic corps, Your Excellencies, were there. We were jubilant. We were celebrating our independence on the 17th of May, belatedly, of course. But today, I think you should have seen that the atmosphere has changed. We can't celebrate sanctions with all these words that we've been talking about, and Juliet added some more. Devastating, debilitating is coming again. Devastating impact. Yes, you can see that, truly speaking, the people of Zimbabwe are in what Juliet calls sheer desperation because of sanctions. And this pushes them into engaging into some illicit activities like prostitution, she mentioned, and other ills of society. Thank you very much, Juliet. And I cannot, let me mention this, the impact it has had on women and children. That's why I was saying she poured out her heart like a mother. Once again, a round of applause for Juliet. Thank you. Oh, we are doing well. We are doing well. Now we need a voice from a youth. You see, English is a very queer language. If you look at our theme, the youth, the word youth, you look at it, it has no S, but it means many people. Can you see what I'm talking about? I teach English, and students sometimes say, but say, why do you say youth and then you say and there is no S? It's one. Then you look now, we have a Namibian youth there who is coming. Is Thaddeus Shitigona around? Yes, clap hands for him. Thaddeus. We want to hear from the Namibian youth.
Thank you so much, Professor Kankira, the Director of Proceedings, as well as I'm told you, the moderator of the panel discussion tonight. I'm not a diplomat, so I'm going to stand by the protocol established by Ambassador Jerobium Shanika, so that perhaps I do not mix up the diplomatic arrangement. My name is Thaddeus Deatila Shitigona. I'm a member of the Central Committee of the SWAPO Party Youth League, the largest youth wing in Namibia. I am also the representative of the SWAPO Party Youth League to the National Youth Council of Namibia, which is the umbrella body of all young people in Namibia as per the Parliament Act or Legislative Act of 2009 as amended. Your Excellency, Comrade Ambassador Shaurura, I wish to congratulate you and the people of Zimbabwe under the capable leadership of His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Dr. Emerson Dabuzwa Mnangagwa, for your relentless efforts and revolutionary fortitude by withstanding the ugly monster of imperialism in the form of illegal sanctions and economic blockades imposed by the West and the US on the Republic of Zimbabwe and its people. You could not therefore have chosen a better and more relevant theme for the SADC Anti-Sanctions Day, given the continued sufferings that Zimbabwe and its people continue to endure, and the significance of the youth voice in that regard. Director of Proceedings, distinguished invited guests, as young people in Namibia, we are aware of the attempts of the imperial forces to keep Africans under oppression and servitude until death do us apart. We know that those who massacred our people for our land and resources did not abandon the declarations of the Berlin Conference that brought about illegal occupation of Africa and the exploitation of our resources. We are therefore proud that the people of Zimbabwe have exercised their sovereign right by expropriating their own land for the benefit of the majority of Zimbabweans. To reason, Zimbabwe to this day, it's the same reason Zimbabwe is still being punished with unilateral, unjustifiable and illegal sanctions. Sanctions by imperial forces are a tool of blackmailing and a coercive force used against us as Africans to condone foreign domination of our land in every sphere of our lives as Africans. It is a tool that is used to frighten Africans that should they dare to take ownership of the means of production and strategic assets in their countries, their economies will collapse and be at the mercy of our colonizers. We are indeed proud that the Zimbabwean government, led by the Zimbabwean African National Union Patriotic Front, ZANU-PF, has gone a long way in laying this foundation for sustained food production through a very progressive land reform program. The majority of rural people in Zimbabwe have been empowered to contribute to household and to national food security. Households have also become the masters of their own destiny through increased possession and expropriation of land. As young people in Namibia and in Africa, we are aware that Zimbabwe has thus far been preoccupied with the empowerment of its people economically, despite the evil machinations of Western countries who continue to apply unilateral and illegal sanctions as a foreign policy tool to achieve short-term political objectives, particularly regime change, not only in Zimbabwe, but in other Southern African countries, Namibia included. We denounce the regime change agenda as a diabolic illegal policy of interference in the domestic affairs of Zimbabwe, and we believe that no good can come from undermining Zimbabwe's economy or depriving the people of Zimbabwe of the necessities of life. Why should Zimbabweans continue to suffer under the yoke of unjustifiable and unwarranted illegal sanctions? We therefore retaliate our long-standing call for the immediate removal of such measures, and we say, down imperialism, down. As Africans and Namibians in particular, we know who Zimbabwe is, and we will never rely on Western propaganda to determine our standing with the people of Zimbabwe. We know Zimbabwe is a peaceful and peace-loving nation that has always been ready to engage in a constructive dialogue for mutually beneficial relations. We call on those who continue to harbor ill will against Zimbabwe and its people to cast away their hegemony-driven hostility and appeal to them to review their hard position and open a new chapter in their new relations with Zimbabwe based on mutual respect and friendly cooperation. We firmly believe that the United Nations should promote dialogue to achieve peace, rule of law, and common understanding among states, peace, security, stability, and welfare of Africa and our sub-region, the SADC, which has sanctioned this day, endorsed this date, so that we continue to have a platform in solidarity with the people of Zimbabwe to make sure that the sanctions are removed without further delay. We are saying Africa must unite to consolidate and canvass maximum support for the removal of sanctions against or imposed on Zimbabwe. Long live the people of Zimbabwe, long live the African unity, long live SADC, long live the African Union. Aluta continua, victory certain.
Thank you, Thaddeus. Thank you, Thaddeus. A round of applause. I will sum up Thaddeus' presentation as follows. Just one short statement, which is the youth have spoken. The youth have spoken. Thank you very much, Thaddeus. You advocate for the solidarity with the people of Zimbabwe who should enjoy their human rights. You are asking why deprive the people of Zimbabwe of their human rights. You condemn the regime change agenda, and you say that there are some evil machinations which are behind the sanctions. And yes, thank you very much. And one thing you mentioned, you are not promoting war, you are promoting dialogue. You are saying let there be dialogue, which can be chaired or initiated or directed by the United Nations, so that there can be peace, so that these evil sanctions can be removed. The youth have spoken. Thank you very much. Another round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, I am not calling for entertainment now. We are running against the time. We were supposed to have 3 minutes entertainment, but I am cancelling that with the powers that are vested in me. The powers that are vested in me, I am cancelling that. Right. We are going to the panel discussion, and my panelists, our panelists are as follows, in no order of importance. It's just names that have just been written like that. Ambassador Jerobim Shanika, we have seen him, he is going to change into a t-shirt, just like me. Dr. Kosam Makunganya, the Dean of Sunshine Private College, please come to the front. Mr. Arthur Makarutse, the Director of Tri-King Academy, please come forward. Just take any seats. Today, you are just sitting in, I will not arranging you. Right, ladies and gentlemen, here are the few rules of the game. We shall proceed while Ambassador is coming. I'll give each presenter some 15 minutes. Then you jot down your questions. You will ask questions when all of them have spoken. So let us start with Mr. Arthur Makarotse. Clap hands for him as he comes to the floor, as he comes forward.
Thank you, the Director of Proceedings, Professor Jairo Ngira, Ambassador Shanika, representative from the Namibian government, the Deputy Secretary General of the mighty SWAPO Party, members of the Diplomatic Corps, the Namibian community, the Zimbabwean community, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's a public lecture about the illegal sanctions imposed on Zimbabwe. So we are here to unpack and expose these illegitimate, illegal, unjust sanctions. I will concentrate on three main parts. In the interest of time, I will try by all means to leave what has been said by the previous presenters. So I will address the background and brief history of the sanctions. I will also look at the impacts of sanctions on the different sectors. Then lastly, I will look at the achievements from the Zimbabwean government in the midst of these sanctions. I think it's important for us to know that Zimbabwe got its independence in 1980, 18 April. Prior to this independence, there was the Lancaster Agreement, which focused much on giving back the land to its rightful owners. And in this agreement, I want everyone to know that it was agreed that the land was supposed to be given back to the owners. Now, after the Lancaster Agreement, 20 years later in 2000, under the leadership of our late former President Robert Mugabe, Zimbabwean government began to redistribute the land to its rightful owners. But this did not go well with the imperialists. I'm talking about the Americans, the Europeans, and their allies. And this gave rise to an enactment of a law in America in December 2001, which they called ZITERA. But when they put this law, they came hiding behind the finger, talking about violation of human rights, which was not the case why these sanctions were being imposed illegally. Because if it was about violating human rights, who was put before the court of law? Who violated those human rights? So we all agree no one was put before a court of law under no jurisdiction, but they used this to enact a law and impose illegal sanctions on Zimbabwe. Now, these sanctions, we call them illegal. One person was asking me, what are sanctions? If you were to ask someone in the street, some they think this is fake. This is a political play which is being played by the political actors. But I want people to understand that when we talk of sanctions, we are talking of a punishment which is given to someone or an entity for breaking down a rule or law. But the biggest question is, what law or rule was broken by Zimbabwe for them to get these sanctions? What law did we break? Getting our land back, was it breaking a law? And they came to say, we did not redistribute the land as it was supposed to be. We did not stick to the Lancaster agreement, so they said. But I asked one journalist who was interviewing me, that when they came to take the land, what agreement did we have? They took this land without any agreement. But now for us to get our land back, we need to follow a certain agreement. Is it their land or our land? We never broke any law. We were just taking what belonged to us. Hence, we call these sanctions illegal. Fast forward in 2008, America and European Union together with their allies, they brought Zimbabwe on the UN agenda so that sanctions could be imposed legally. But thanks to the Security Council, they rejected such an agenda, and these sanctions, again, they became unilaterally imposed, not multilaterally imposed. Because according to the UN Charter, it's not allowed for another country to involve itself in the political and domestic issues of a sovereign state, which America was doing in this case. And the Security Council of the UN said no sanctions are going to be imposed on Zimbabwe with the permission of the UN. Hence we call them illegitimate and illegal and unjust. So one has to understand that these sanctions, they came in two ways. One from the American side through the ZIDERA, and through European, which they called the arms embargo and targeted sanctions. I'm being told there is a car which has got lights on, 655W, N655W, the lights are on. You may go and check the car. So I was explaining the nature of sanctions, that the sanctions came in two ways. One from the American side, where they enacted a law in the form of ZIDERA. And I came to ask myself, is America now the police of the world, who have the rights to come and say, we are going to put a law which will control another sovereign state? Who gave them this mandate? Self-appointed police of the world. And today we are here gathered saying these sanctions are illegal and they need to be lifted unconditionally. So these sanctions, like I said, the European side, they came through arms embargo and targeted sanctions. And a lot of people are in the street saying they are targeted sanctions. They are not supposed to be targeted to the masses of Zimbabwe. But the biggest question is, who is suffering? Who is targeted? If you are to check, there are some individuals who are targeted, yes, but at the same time there are also SOEs, state-owned enterprises, which are on this sanction list. And these are the same entities which are supposed to provide employment to the majority of Zimbabweans. Now if they are targeted, what are the results? We need to agree, ladies and gentlemen, that this is what I termed a result of a failed abortion. Sanctions, it's a failed abortion. A child who was not needed, we don't need such. But America tried by all means to influence the United Nations that these sanctions should be multilateral, which until today it's not the case. Now, moving forward to the impacts in the interest of time. The sanctions Thank you, Prof. The sanctions have affected different sectors of the economy. The reason why I'm saying this, Zimbabwe's economy is backed by two main sectors, which is agriculture and mining. And under the sanction list of the targeted entities, one of the main entity is MMCZ, Mineral Marketing Corporation of Zimbabwe. This is an entity which is responsible for soliciting markets and administering sales of minerals. But in 2008, America, together with European and their allies, they put MMCZ under the sanction list. That means it could no longer do its mandate, which is for soliciting the markets and administering the sales of our own minerals. And hence, there was a decline in terms of our revenue coming from the sale of our own minerals. If you look at agriculture as the second sector, I'm now moving fast because of time. Somebody told me that Zimbabwe before 2000, we used to have the bread basket title. What happened after we took our land? And a lot of people, they think that the land was given to people who are not able to produce. But I beg to differ on that part. Why? Because if you look at the people or the white farmers who were into farming before 2000, these are farmers who were fully financed by Agribank. But after 2001, when America and EU imposed sanctions on Zimbabwe, Agribank became one of the entity again which was put on the sanction list, meaning to say they could no longer finance the smallholder farmers so that they could produce as much as they can. So it's no longer, or it's not about the people who are given land, they are not able to produce. It's about the financing part. Money speaks. I'm sure we all agree. Money talks. If you have money, you can do whatever you want. But there was no money for our farmers. Why? Because we have taken what belonged to us. But there is no going back. And we keep saying this, and we will continue saying this. The land belonged to us, and it will forever belong to us until Jesus comes. So, after Agribank was put on the sanction list, that meant our farmers could no longer get some loans for them to be able to produce, access to inputs, access to industrial technologies which they need for them to produce. But one thing I like, fast forward now, moving to the Second Republic. This has no longer been the same song of lack of production. Our new president has come with a new tune, that production, production, production. The same farmers who could not access loans under the new republic, programs have been put in place. Programs like Fumboza, where they are able to access some inputs and produce as much to feed the masses of Zimbabwe. And I can stand here and declare that Zimbabwe has broken some wheat production records in the history of Africa region. We are no longer importing wheat in Zimbabwe. Instead, we are about to export to other neighboring states. So this has come now into achievements of what the Zimbabwean government, the new Second Republic, is now doing through the NDS-1, National Development Strategy 1, which was implemented in 2020, which is a 5-key blueprint program which focuses much on agriculture, mining, tourism, manufacturing, and energy. Talking about energy, we used to suffer from load shedding, but this is now a thing of the past. Those who go back home, they will confess and say, we no longer hear about load shedding. Why? Because the Wange power station has been enlarged. We are now producing enough electricity. The Kariba hydroelectric power station has been enlarged. We are now producing enough electricity, which is enough to supply the masses or the citizens of Zimbabwe. This is all the fruits which the NTS-1 is bearing under the able leadership of our one and only President E.D. Mnangagwa. Somebody told me, or somebody asked me, you continuously talk about, if you talk about anything, you say it's because of sanction. If you talk about roads, it's because of sanction. You talk about inflation, it's because of sanction. Are these sanctions real? Then I just produced a document which was produced by the UN Special Rapporteur Alan Doha, who was sent by the UN General Assembly to come and assess the impacts which were caused by the illegal sanctions. And in that report, it clearly states that the sanctions, the illegal sanctions, have caused untold suffering to the masses of Zimbabwe. And she continues to mention that they have to be lifted unconditionally. So if UN is acknowledging that the sanctions are real, the sanctions are causing sufferings, who am I to deny that the sanctions are not real? Sanctions are real. Sanctions are causing the untold suffering. And we are here to amplify the voices. The reason for this lecture is to give knowledge to somebody who might be in darkness about what are sanctions, are they real? But we are here to enlighten the world that the sanctions should go. The sanctions should be removed unconditionally. I thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. Another round of applause. Right, I've changed the strategy. I won't comment because you are going to ask questions. If I comment on his presentation, I might be, I might be answering or not even answering your question. Let us just wait until the Q&A session. At this juncture, I will call upon Dr. Kosam Makunganya to give his presentation, which is a 15-minute presentation. Here you are, Doctor.
Thank you very much, the Director of Ceremonies, Professor Kangira. With all protocols observed, I don't want to waste time, but however, I would like to acknowledge Ambassador Shanika, who is representing the Namibian community here, and I would also like to acknowledge our Ambassador in absentia, Your Excellency, Median Chaurura, who is in Zimbabwe on other commitments, the members of the diplomatic corps here present, and my fellow Zimbabwean citizens. My preamble, before I give my presentation, is that the day we are here for is for every Zimbabwean. It's not a political event. It's for all Zimbabweans. Why am I saying that? Whether you are from which party, we are suffering the same. We buy from the same store. We dance to the same tune of sanctions. So it's our day. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to present this lecture, but before I present it, I'm honored to be here. In 1981, when I was in Form 1 at St. Patrick's High School in Gweru, Zimbabwe, I was one of the students at Ascot Stadium to welcome the founding President of Namibia, Comrade Sam Nujoma. Today I'm standing here in a free Namibia. And as a coincidence, the professor who seated there, in 1981, we were in the same stadium when he was a student teacher at Mukoba Teachers College. What a coincidence. So, Ambassador, go and tell the founding father that the people who were presenting are people who welcomed you during the time when Namibia sought assistance or solidarity from Zimbabwe. The doctor here standing, Dr. Kosa Makunganya, I was a Form 1 people who was among the students who put a flower on his shoulder. Ladies and gentlemen, sanctions, sanctions. This is not a joke. Sanctions, sanctions. The speakers who have spoken before me, they've already alluded to how sanctions affect the general populace of Zimbabwe, regardless of political affiliation, creed, or what can I say? Right. Ladies and gentlemen, the economic and social impact of sanctions on Zimbabwe is substantial and multifaceted. These sanctions have affected the country's economy, its livelihoods, and the overall development in various areas. Now, our ambassador who spoke here, she alluded to the economic impact of the sanctions. One of the major impacts was the reduced investment on trade. There is no any country that can move forward without trading efficiently. Sanctions have discouraged foreign investments and trade, making it difficult for Zimbabwe to attract capital and resources essential for the economic growth of the country. The sanctions have limited Zimbabwe's access to international financial institutions and markets so that they help in the balance of payment for our country. Hyperinflation and economic decline. Sanctions have contributed to the hyperinflation of Zimbabwe, which has made our currency the useless currency all over. And our country is using different currencies, which is not known by other countries. Why this? Sanctions. If you go to the supermarket to buy in Zimbabwe, you can buy in 4 currencies, which is not possible. And who is affected by this? The ordinary Zimbabwean who goes and pay, who goes and buy goods in the shops. The currency depreciation. Every day, our currency is linked to the United States dollar. The monster who's making us Zimbabweans to suffer. And our currency is determined by you. What is this? It's an insult. You are controlling us everywhere. In your currency, in the usage of your currency, right? You are controlling the livelihoods of our people. Prices are going every day. And everyone in Zimbabwe, even a street vendor, is a money changer. And he knows the exchange rate every day. What is that? What is that, comrades? What is that? Sanctions. Down with sanctions. Right, I continue. Food shortages. You find prices are changed every day in shops. Prices are changed every day in shops. Right? Why? Everyone now has the mentality of making every Zimbabwean suffer. Everyone has joined the community of saboteurs, making Zimbabweans feel bad. Why making Zimbabweans feel bad? That is a regime change agenda. A discontented citizen will revolt against this government. Right? Right. I go on. Right. Now I finish the economic impact. I now go to the social impact. Poverty and inequality. The economic challenges have caused 2 classes of people in Zimbabwe. The haves and the have-nots. If you don't have anything, you don't have. If you have, you have. So a country cannot operate without a middle class. So that is the situation that has arisen in our country because of sanctions. Healthcare and education. The health and education system have been severely affected. Access to quality health and education service has become more difficult, and many Zimbabweans resulting in negative social outcomes. Myself, I was educated in Zimbabwe after independence. When I went to the Teachers College, university, it was free. It was a period when there were no sanctions. You just get a letter that you've been accepted at a college. You learn free until you complete your education. What you only pay is the graduation fee, but that is not the case now. Myself, I traveled to universities. One day I was traveling to Zimbabwe. I reached Gweru because I stayed in Kwekwe, where the president stays. When I reached a place known as a Midlands Hotel, there were small girls there. Then I asked, who are these girls? They are university students. What are they doing this time? They are looking for men so that they can get food. But you know, at time, everything was financed by the government before the sanctions. So, also sanctions have made the migration of skilled labor to various countries. If you go to any country, you will find a Zimbabwean. Professors, my brother was here. He should be a vice chancellor in Zimbabwe. But he's here. He also left because of the heat back home. And he's here. And I'm here also, I should be home. I was asked one question by one friend of mine, a soldier at Osona. But you are a doctor. Why are you here? Why don't you go and solve the problems at your country? You are educated people. Yeah, we know that Zimbabwe is full of educated people. But why are you all over? Go and solve the problem. Then if you tell the person we are here because of sanctions, we want to try and help, get something for whom the person won't understand. And lastly, these sanctions have made our children to be drug addicts. Children or these small boys are getting pleasure in taking drugs, right? Which is a bad thing. And Namibian community who are here in our ambassador, the Zimbabweans whom you see selling belts here, they are teachers. Some of them are graduates. Very learned. And some have got master's degrees. A minimum qualification for one to be a lecturer at a university. But sanctions have made those people run away from home and come here and get those few cents and exchange. Ladies and gentlemen, in my conclusion, Zimbabwe will never be a colony again. Never. That country was one through thick and narrow. So trying to say Zimbabwe, let's give sanctions and remove the government, the blood which was lost by our foreign brothers and sisters cannot be put to waste. And trying to make a regime change in Zimbabwe is not a walk in the park. I rest my case. Thank you very much.
I want to comment. I will not speak now. I will speak when all of them have spoken. Comrade Ambassador, it's your turn now. Thank you very much. Let's put your hands together for Ambassador. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director of Ceremony. Distinguished guests, I can promise you that I am not going to speak long. Don't be afraid. But if I negate on my promise, you have the right to impose sanction on me. Now, distinguished, Your Excellency, distinguished guests, of course, I have already acknowledged the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, the Dean of Africa, actually the Chair of SADC. Angola is the Chair of SADC. Now, we are discussing here the harnessing youth for accelerated socio-economic development in the fight against sanctions. Now, I have a question. I think when we are using sanction, it seems even to a kind of legitimizing. This, according to my definition, are unilateral cohesive measure. I think that is the proper word we must use. Now, before venturing into this anti-sanction effort, so let me just start by posing a few thought-provoking questions. As I have said that we need to put the sanction into proper context. Now, are these sanctions legal, legitimate in their application, or they are unilateral to the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela? And I have seen the impact of sanctions, but I have also seen the resilience of people toward those sanctions. And with those sanctions, whether it is in Cuba or in Venezuela or in Zimbabwe or any other country, they were put there to influence change, the regime change. I remember very well, in Cuba they have helps and bottom under the so-called Libertad Act. It's that they wanted to change the direction of Cuba, to impose the so-called reparation, and under the phony democratic, they wanted to impose, to bring about democracy. Now, one thing that these people they do, they will find useful tools in each country, and then they speak behind them. Actually, they will be doing the talk like parrots. You know when you have a parrot that's talking, and they will be sitting there nodding their heads. Now, that is how this the aims of the sanction are. Now, what are the main reasons that trigger imposition of sanction? I think it was clearly stated out. Now, this sanction were imposed because of land distribution. And of course, Alfred is mentioning the Lancaster Agreement. I mean, we have all read about it. But of course, one thing also people don't forget is that when the Lancaster was negotiated, the people of Zimbabwe also had an eye on the struggle that was going on in Southern Africa. And they said, if we start dealing, or we start doing, or not compromise, then it gives the reason for the whites in Namibia and South Africa to say, oh yeah, this is what it means to do. So Zimbabwe was an example to reassure that it's not, independence is not all lost. Now, why are the unilateral cohesive measures imposed selectively, while others in situation, those imposing sanctions bury their heads in the sand or pretend that what they are doing is different to the other situation? If you justify the condition or the reason that they are talking about, you will find something happening in another country. And sometimes that country is even very close to those countries. But they keep quiet. Because it's a divide and rule. If they think that the other country does not or is trying to be stubborn, they try to teach a reason. So now, therefore, as it was already stated, At the 39th of, summit of the Southern African Development Community, the heads of states and government in Dar es Salaam, United Republic of Tanzania, declared the 25th of October as a SADC, or a date which SADC member states collectively voiced their disapproval and the condemnation of sanctions against Zimbabwe through various activities and platforms until the sanctions are lifted. Are there merits in SADC agreement? The SADC Committee of Ministers responsible for gender and women affairs during their meeting in May in Windhoek recognized that the perpetual existence of economic sanctions illegally and unfairly imposed on Zimbabwe, particularly by the United States and the European Union, is affecting Zimbabwe economic development and livelihood of the people. It was already demonstrated here, and I cannot even waste your time to repeat what was said. So some member states are aware of hypocrisies practiced by those who resort to unilateral cohesive measures to demand conformity and change in political direction of the targeted countries. It's nothing that to influence change, so that they bring up people that they want or they can work with. You can be rest assured. When, this is just like when you have a booster, you go to space. You see, you need something that make it delivery, or even the rocket, you need a delivery system. So, these sanctions and the words that they put around, those are sweet words to make you fall for them, but beneath, as it says in the Bible, they come to you as if they are innocent, but beneath they are hungry wolves. Now, the Zimbabwe Democracy and Economic Recovery Act, which has already been cited, the Bizera, it was an act passed by the United States Congress, which imposed sanctions on Zimbabwe. So again, on March 5th, the then President Donald Trump, the new sanction against Zimbabwe for another year in accordance with the National Emergency Act. So, as the statement of the Deputy Prime Minister says, the preamble of the Charter of the United Nations promises to promote social progress and better standards and larger freedom. How can a country achieve social progress where it is subjected to unilateral restrictions? So these are thought-provoking questions that we should ask ourselves, so that when they come to you to tell you sanction is because it's corruption, they hate corruption in their countries also. Elections, well, who could forget about 2000 elections, pregnant child, and so on and so forth. And even the past election in the United States, it's still contested. Trump said it's stolen. So, can we also impose sanctions on them? It's these things of power, the hand of power, where you think when you have absolute control, you want to control everybody else. That's when you forget that the democracy that you are preaching, you are a dictator to us, and we will condemn you with any contempt you deserve. So I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Another round of applause. Right. We are almost there. We started late, and truly speaking, our 2 hours will be there at 20 past with some minutes for the Q&A. I am very strict when it comes to time. The Dean, Dr. Makumba knows it. Very, very strict when it comes to time. So let us stick to time. When we say it's 2 hours, it's strictly 2 hours. Ladies and gentlemen, you have heard them speaking. Can I also call Juliet to join the panelists? Maybe there will be some people who want to ask you a question. And Chedias, come and join the panel also. Right? But our questions are mainly focusing on the 3 gentlemen who are seated here. Juliet, she went outside. All right. You can sit on my, it doesn't matter, sit there. Yeah. All right. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? I think all of us now know what sanctions are. We might have known before, but our knowledge has been increased. Our knowledge has been enriched by the presentations of our panelists here, and we can ask some questions, they will answer. Let us make the questions very short and to the point, and I will restrict them to 5 questions only. Who would want to start? Yes, comrade. Can someone assist me with the roving mic? Someone to assist me with the mic? Thank you, comrade. Hello? It's fine. And this one is for the panelists.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Wahek Waherunga, Deputy Secretary General of the Soko Party. And my question goes to my young comrade, the first speaker, the first panelist. For the sake of the understanding of the young people, you spoke of the largest agreements before the independence of Zimbabwe. Can you explain to us the meaning of those agreements? What were those agreements? And were those agreements honored in Zimbabwe between 1980 and 2000? I thank you.
Thank you so much for the question. Yes, in 1979, before Zimbabwe got independence, there was the longest agreement, and in that agreement, we need to note the key issue was the reason why there was the war in Zimbabwe, and the key issue was land. So the agreement was, or they agreed that the land was supposed to be given back to the Zimbabwean people after 20 years, and the farmers who were occupying the land were supposed to be compensated. But the compensation was for the developments which they had done on the land, because the land still remained to the rightful owners who were the Zimbabweans. But this compensation was supposed to be bankrolled by the former colonizer, which was Britain, not the Zimbabwean government. But fast forward in 2000, when this was supposed to be implemented, the British government started chickening out, and that's when they started now talking about how the land was supposed to be redistributed, which was not well with the Zimbabwean government, to a point where we said there is no turning back to the land which we went for war, because we wanted the land. Hence, we are where we are right now because we went for war to get our land back,
And under the leadership of President Mugabe, the land was given to the rightful owners, which made Britain, European Union, and America angry. Hence, they ended up imposing sanctions to Zimbabwe. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Comrade Engineer Windhoek. I've got a question to the panelists, which goes, don't you think we are fighting losing battle, considering the mentality of the people who imposed these sanctions? They like war, they are fighting everywhere, they are supporting Israel, in Ukraine, they are fighting war. Don't you think they won't even consider lifting those sanctions?
Thank you very much, Engineer Mofu. I think what Zimbabwe is doing now, under the theme, the country is built by its owners. There are a lot of developments which are taking place in Zimbabwe, and even the Americans are ashamed. How is Zimbabwe managing all these developments in infrastructure, everything, everywhere, even our roads? Our government has done a great job with limited resources and with homegrown resources without even using external finances. Zimbabwe is still ticking. In the end, and I swear they will come back to us. We are doing very well with those sanctions. And you know what, adding to that, if there is any problem in any country, you make what we call homegrown solutions. And homegrown solutions are even more effective than using money which has conditions on it.
Yeah, thanks. I also just want to add something, because if I understand you very well, the question is, are we not wasting time? Now the question is that if we do not stand up for ourselves, nobody will stand up for us. When we were under colonialism, we took our arms, and there were many people who were saying, we are fighting a powerful armies, backed by powerful friends. You will not be able to defeat them. Where are we today? So once you remain persistent and you believe, as Mahatma Gandhi that I quoted, the truth never damages the cause that is just. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bertha, and I think my question would add a little bit to what Professor Kofi just asked, which is in regard to it being a losing battle. There is a new African continental free trade area, which I believe, or as it's going on now, could be a way to circumvent this. I think it would be a good way, a better way to circumvent Zimbabwe's sanctions. I mean, if we could trade freely in the continent. If this is now a losing battle international-wise, what can be done around that? And what is Zimbabwe's position within the African continental free trade area? I thank you.
Should I ask my question? Thank you, Ambassador Robin. Good evening to you. My name is Kelvin Chirima. I'm a Zimbabwean. I'm a journalist working for the Namibian newspaper. I'm also an author, a poet. Maybe just to bring it back to any of you, in your analysis and in your narration of the history of the Zimbabwean sanctions, there's one missing part. If you could elaborate further on the role of the movement for democratic change in attracting these sanctions towards Zimbabwe. What role did they play? And at the same time, the fast-track land reform. Can you demystify the narrative that President Robert Mugabe was opposed to an unorganized fast-track land reform. But because of the persistent pressure that came from the disgruntled and disenfranchised former combatants, and that they marched on the offices of Robert Mugabe and threatened him to oust him, and that he panicked into then having to resort to a fast-track, disorganized, violent and bloody land reform because he was afraid of losing power. Can you demystify that? Thank you.
Okay, I think, thank you once again for the opportunity. I think I'm going to try to answer the question of whether Zimbabwe is fighting a losing battle or us gathering here to call for the lifting of illegal sanctions imposed against Zimbabwe is a losing battle. Now, the thing is this, we are aiming in solidarity with Zimbabwe to consolidate the support. First, in Africa, where we can even say if you impose sanctions against Zimbabwe, then you don't get the Namibian diamond, you don't get the South African platinum, you don't get the Ghanaian gold, and we see what is going to happen to American and British enterprises that are built on our resources. So the platform, number one, is aimed to create that solidarity as brothers in Africa and our friends in the world. We have international friends, China, Russia, Cuba, Venezuela, and others, North Korea, you name them. If we are in solidarity, first with the African continent and say, when you pick a fight with Zimbabwe, you also pick a fight with Namibia and everybody else. In Africa, I think that is not going to be a losing battle, and I believe this platform seeks to exactly exercise that, where we will be able to be in solidarity and be able to say, that's why we have Professor, I think that arrangement, Professor Kangira is employed by UNA to say if our professor cannot get a job in Zimbabwe, let them come to Namibia. They will still be able to pass on their knowledge. I think that is the aim of this platform. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that should be the last question. After him, no more question. Is there anyone with a burning question after him? All right, the last one, you. That's okay. Thank you.
Good evening, Manero.
Just a moment. He wants to answer a response from him.
All right. Answering back to Engineer Mofu and my sister about us fighting a losing battle. One needs to understand that the Zim situation has been treated by the Americans, Zimbabwe, as an example that whichever African state or in SADC who tries the same will face the consequence. So if Zimbabwe tries to chicken out, that's already an own goal to us. That means all Africans are never going to get back their land. But are we ready to become colonized again? Are we going back to say Britain, America should come back and take back the land and we listen to them and we do as they say? So in the unity of solidarity, that's why we are having such a day like this, which was set by SADC, that this is not a fight which should be upon Zimbabwe on its own. This is a SADC fight. This is an African fight, because the imperialists, they are not happy that these people are getting their means of production back into their own hands. So this is never going to be a losing battle. We will continue the fight until the black person owns the means of production. Then, thank you. Then the last speaker talked about Mugabe losing power and then entering into the first land reform program. This is not correct. I beg to differ. Because if you check, even after 2000, Mugabe continued winning elections. Until 2013, Mugabe was still winning elections 13 years after the land was taken. So this had nothing to do with losing power. It had to do with fulfilling the agreement of the Lancaster Agreement, which the British had also taken part in that agreement that the land was supposed to go back to where it belonged to. So Mugabe was just fulfilling what was agreed in the Lancaster Agreement. So the sanctions did not only, one thing we need to understand, they did not only come because of the question. It also came as destabilization in DRC. And in SADC we have the organ of politics and defense, and President Mugabe assigned some defense, the military personnel to go and assist to stabilize DRC. And that angered again America and the European Union because they had interest in DRC through Uganda, through Rwanda, which they were using. So the sanctions did not only come because of the land, and this is never going to be a losing battle. Thank you.
Also answering my journalist there, if you are a liberation movement and you go to war, you have got an objective to accomplish. And Zimbabwe went to war to redress the inequality in as far as the land was concerned on the general populace of Zimbabwe. And now, as a country, how can you say you are independent when your people did not get the land which they were fighting for? So, what President Mugabe did to give land, he had been, patient. There were negotiations. The British renegated on the earlier agreement to say they were going to compensate what? The land which was going to be given to the Zimbabwean population. So, time was not on our side. Because some of these people who went to war were becoming old, right? Without receiving the land which they fought for. Right, in the case of the MDC, as the journalist has said, yes, all these sanctions were centered on MDC to take power from ZANU-PF. So, all the discontentment which were happening in Zimbabwe were aimed at making the Zimbabwean people restless and become impatient. And if you look during that time, that's when there were a lot of protests in Zimbabwe until the government put everything in order. So, my contribution is that any liberation country which went to war and got independent and has not given its people land up to now, ladies and gentlemen, I call that an uncompleted chapter. Right, my last contribution, if you look at our theme here, our emphasis is on the youth. Why the youth? The youth don't understand where the sanctions came from, right? So, we are trying to give the youth the history, where we came from, where we are now, and where we are going. Why? Because the youth are the fathers and mothers of tomorrow. We must give them the correct orientation to take Zimbabwe ahead when we are no longer there.
Okay, the last one. Thank you, Dean. Maybe to add a bit, you know, the Lancaster House, the British government said for the next 10 years after independence, don't touch the land. After 10 years, then they will give you money, funds, to do an orderly resettlement. And the British reneged on this, as what the Dean has just said. So, sometimes the youths don't understand this history. We understand it. We were there seeing things happen. The war, the Lancaster House, and you know, 1980, 1981, people were getting onto white men's farms, the commercial farms. And Robert Mugabe's government was sending soldiers and the policemen to remove the people from the white men's farms. Why? Because of the Lancaster House Agreement. He had to protect the white man's farms, waiting for those 10 years. But after 10 years, the British did not give the money as it was agreed. So I just wanted to add that point. The last person, please, time is not on our side.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Manero, once again. My name is Christoph Sikosi, the National Secretary of Education representing SWAPO Party Youth League. So before I go into my question, let me assure the House that the SWAPO Party Youth League is in full solidarity against the sanction. With me here is the International Affairs National Secretary of the SWAPO Party Youth League. As I've just mentioned, I'm a teacher by profession, trained in Zimbabwe. Yeah, I was trained in the year when, if those who can remember to say, this is the final battle for total independence of Zimbabwe by Zimbabwe. Which year was that? Yes, 2007, 2008. Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Now, back to my duties, why I stood up. The first presenter mentioned of some prospect happening in Zimbabwe. He mentioned of Angwe Power Station, the Kariba, that has been enlarged. No more load shedding. So the time I was there, they were load shedding, but there are no more load shedding. He mentioned of the wheat production that has increased. Those are a good story to tell about Zimbabwe. The president constantly mentioning that people should invest in Zimbabwe. Now, those are good stories. My question is, are we telling that good story about Zimbabwe? Or who should tell that good story about Zimbabwe? So that despite the sanction, there is still good happening in Zimbabwe. Who should tell and how should we tell about it? That's my first question. My second question is on the second presenter, mention of hyperinflation. Yes, I was once a pioneer in Zimbabwe by that time. Yes, the bearer check were all over. So, he mentioned of this, the economic impact which continues, that the currency is linked to the US dollars. Now there's a new development of coming the issue of BRICS. So I'm now trying to understand why is Zimbabwe in hesitation to join BRICS so that we can continue relying on or linking the currency to the US dollar, which continue to pay with the depression. Those are my two questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Comrade Christoph, for your questions. And I think on my side, the question is, who should tell the story and are we telling the story? And my answer will be very short. Yes, the theme says harnessing the youth. We are telling the story, us as the youth of Zimbabwe. Now the question might be, how are we telling the story? Together with our president, there are a lot of programs which have been put in place, which mainly targets the youth. I'll give you a few examples which happened this year. The president has been on a program of empowering the state universities, colleges. For example, with the Harare Institute of Technology, which he officiated in the manufacturing of batteries from the locally mined lithium. Remember, Zimbabwe is one of the biggest lithium producers in the SADC region, and it's now happening in Zimbabwe. Very soon you will be getting batteries locally made in Zimbabwe. That's a sign of telling the story, that regardless of the sanctions being there, we are still doing things. And if you look at Windhoek University of Science and Technology, Windhoek University of Science and Education, Zimbabwe used to import chemicals for water treatment, but that's now a thing of the past. chemicals are now being made by the youth, the students who are in these national universities. So the story is being said, the story is being told by the same Zimbabweans, because our president has already said the country can only be built by its own people. Thank you.
Right, on publicity, this one now I urge the fellow comrades who are in diaspora. Ladies and gentlemen, we are Zimbabweans. Namibia, we are just hosted here. So wherever we are, let's speak positively about our country. Because we are the ones who should even speak more about sanctions, to say they are bad. If I look at all of you here, when it is mandate, you crack your head. Western Union, the exchange rate, you remain with nothing in your pocket. Right? We remain with literally nothing. Why? The US dollar. If we're using our own currency in the country, everything would be nice. And I'm happy to say, if those who are reading the media, there is something going on. The government is contemplating dumping the US dollar and resort to our own currency. All these problems will be thing of the past. Right? Coming to the BRIC, that one can be answered by those in authority at home. We have got financial people, the Minister of Finance. We have got the Reserve Bank Governor. Those are the people who are qualified to speak about either joining the BRICS. It's above our level.
Thank you, Doctor. Is that a question?
That's a comment.
Oh yes, the chairperson.
Thank you, Prof. I just want to say that we are.
You are the last speaker.
I just want to say that we are glad we gave the application to join the BRICS.
Is it on?
Yeah, it's on. We actually applied to the BRICS, join the BRICS.
Did you hear that? Zimbabwe applied to join BRICS. Thank you very much. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our public lecture, SADC Anti-sanctions Day lecture. You will agree with me that the presentations were full of meaning and we learned quite a lot. Before I give a vote of thanks, I would like to give announcements. Mr. Kamba, Usar, can you stand? All the dignitaries, our SWAPO representatives, the Deputy Secretary, our Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps, you follow that gentleman for refreshments. The rest, I think you should keep standing, or you will stand so that they can see you walking. Yes. You follow Comrade Kanga. The rest, we have our refreshments in the courtyard here. Right, at this juncture, can I call you to give the presents before I give the vote of thanks? Presents. Right, in Zimbabwe we have a drink from a place called Mazowe. And that drink, can I have one? Just say yes. Now, this is not Oros. When I came to Namibia, I saw Oros and I bought thinking it was Mazowe. But at the end, there was some bitter taste and I never bought Oros again. I was used to this one, straight from oranges. Right. So, you can go ahead and give them before I give the vote of thanks. Or should I start with the vote of thanks? Without repeating the protocol, I would want to say thank you for coming. On behalf of our President Emerson Mnangagwa, the President of the Second Republic of Namibia, on behalf of the Ambassador Melody Chaurora, on behalf of the Zimbabwean community, on behalf of the people of the Republic of Zimbabwe who are in Zimbabwe, who are really under sanctions, and on behalf of the presenters who took their time to put together thoughts and notes on sanctions imposed on Zimbabwe. And on my own behalf as your moderator, at the same time, Director of Ceremonies. Without mentioning your titles, I want to thank you for coming to this public lecture. You must clap hands for yourselves for coming. Thank you for making my job very easy. And I want to thank these ladies from the embassy for the preparations they made throughout these last 2-3 weeks. They were holding meetings to put this public lecture in place. And I want to say that you can see that the public lecture has been a resounding success. So thank you very much. Once more, a hand of applause to our President, to our Ambassador, to the Embassy, everyone. Let us give them a round of applause. Thank you very much. I give you the time before we go to the ambulance.
Thank you, everyone. I wouldn't want to add on what the MC have already said. We really appreciate your coming, and we hope those who are supposed to remove the sanctions have heard it, and they will take note that really it's high time these sanctions be removed on our country. We thank you. And for now, we want to appreciate our VIP with the Mazoe, is highlighted by our Master of Ceremony. We'll start with we'll start with Ambassador Jerobin Shanika, our